Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Mom at Home. I'm BJ Morgan, Marketing and Promotions Manager. Actually, just Marketing Manager for the Museum of Making Music. I'm back from vacation, which was a lovely vacation. And then I did get a chance to review and see the Muriel Anderson Mom at Home a couple weeks ago when Dave was hosting. It was fantastic. And today, I believe we're going to have just as a fantastic show as we did then. We have... Gosh, one of San Diego's most dynamic artists that I can think of, and I have had the pleasure of knowing at least a decade or so. Maybe not, we don't go out for drinks all the time, but at least I've had the chance to get to meet Steph a while ago. I remember her first concert here at the Museum of Making Music. I believe when she was just starting off. Playing music as an artist. She had an acquaintance of mine, Jesse Charno, on drums. I'll never forget Jesse. But she, at the end of this concert, she belted out Sir Duke by Stevie Wonder, and everybody in the room was on their feet, just jamming and grooving. And I remember since that day, I'm like, wow, this is phenomenal. And now, today, it's just it's unimaginable. You couldn't tell me where's Steph Johnson going to be 10, 15 years from now. I'm like, I would never in my wildest dreams imagine where she has come and where she is now. And we had originally slated today's Mom at Home with our executive director, Carolyn Grant, but unfortunately she had some other last minute things to attend to, so you have to deal with myself and you have to deal with Mr. Bill, which I know it's okay because we do such a fun job here at Mom at Home, and I'm so pleased to have Steph Johnson here with us today. And a little, if you're not in on the secret, she's going to be doing a live streaming concert here at the museum on this stage behind me. There's not going to be an audience here because we can't do that yet. We have to remain socially distant and safe and healthy. But Steph will be here, Rob will be here, and a couple other notable musicians. I'll let her talk about them. We've got tickets still on sale at the museum's website, museumofmakingmusic.org. And then I will be here running sound. It'll be a gorgeous sounding event. It'll be a gorgeously performed event. And we hope you can join us for that. But for today, we're going to be talking with Steph and learning about her, life as an artist, her development, her evolution, and what she's hoping to do today and tomorrow. So she's done so much already, and there's so much more in store. I can't imagine it. But anyway, let's. I'm going to hand it over to you guys. Mr. Bill, Steph, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, BJ.
Thank you.
Steph.
Thank you, BJ. Hi, thanks, you guys.
All I can add to that is what he said.
I'm so honored. It is funny. Like, I have been knowing you for like a decade. I've done a lot of different little odd end gigs for the Museum of Making Music, and of course involved with NAMM and all that, and become friends with you guys. You guys are amazing. So thanks for letting me come and play too tomorrow, because that'll be my first concert in, when did the pandemic start? In March? That's my first concert.
March, yeah. We closed up shop March 13th, Friday the 13th. Ooh. And then we did our first live concert with Carl Verheyen last month, and so we were so excited how well that went. Like, we got to get some really killer artists in here, and so Steph Johnson right up there.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, Steph, thank you. You are indeed a friend of the museum, and one of the other things you did for us about a year ago, February, you came in and you gave a songwriting workshop to our volunteers. Do you remember that?
I do. That was cool.
It was a whole lot of fun, and you were just the perfect person to choose for that, because you were up on stage and you said, okay, everybody, write down some lines. And volunteers wrote some lines down. And sent them up to you, and you had your guitar and you started making some things happen. Why don't we start there, Steph? When you either see a lyric that somebody's handed you, or you see a lyric in your mind, what's your next step as far as turning that into a song?
Well, I write it down or I record it right away. I think what I've figured out for me, because I'm busy with running the organization, the Voices of Our City Choir, I do all these other things in a day, that when inspiration comes, I have to record it and I have to capture it, because I don't know when it's going to come again, because my brain is so full now with executive director things. So I had an idea this morning, and I didn't have any paper or pen, so I grabbed my laptop and I sent myself an email with the song, and I just wrote in the subject, new song. And I was writing, Rob came in the bedroom to tell me something. I was like, hey, I'm writing a new song. Or, so you just have to get it down. I think that's the biggest thing.
You get it down when it's fresh on your mind, and you touch on something that we can take advantage of today, the laptop, the computer. If you don't have a piece of paper and a pen, boom, open that computer and go.
I'm kind of old fashioned too. Like I'm not really up to date with all the technology. Like I have a lot of the technology, but I have to have other people help me set it up. So I still like a journal. I'm still, one time I was at a this radio thing with what was her name? The singer from oh my God, what is the name of that band? Never mind. I'll think of her name later. But a super famous woman who talked about keeping a journal and writing everything in her journal, like her to-do list, her shopping list, her brain dump, and then songs she'd write. And not Joni Mitchell, of course. It was somebody else, like big. But anyways, I'll think of it.
And what you say is so true. I mean, it's great to have the technology, but what would you rather pick up if you were, say, in a bookstore and you wanted to see the memoirs of somebody who had been an artist, an actor, actress, composer? Would you rather see that in their handwritten prose or a bunch of emails they'd sent to themselves, right?
Which one would I prefer?
That's what I'm saying. You've touched on something that, I think we would all agree it's nicer to see it in someone's handwritten prose, yes?
Yeah. I mean, you've got to get your inspiration out. You have to, I think being an artist, one of the coolest things about getting, to say that you're an artist and really believe and feel it in your heart that you're an artist is that when the inspiration comes, you push everything aside and you serve that, you allow that to be, so it's a relationship and you have to nurture it.
Absolutely. One of the vocalists I was working with at one point, we were chatting about something and I said, I don't mean to toot my own horn. He said, no, you're an artist. You need to do that. You need to know that that's who you are, and it's okay to say, this is what I've done and I feel good about it, right? There's no shame in that.
No.
So let's go back, Steph. What in your life, how did you first find yourself being drawn into the world of music? What was it about it?
I got into music as a kid. I really loved, my whole family sang. Everybody played an instrument, and my mother had gigs, my uncle had gigs. For a long time, my uncle was like a pianist at Humphreys, like back in the 80s. And then he went on to do like kind of like spiritual religious music. And then my mom played flute, piano, she sang, she fronted bands. So it was kind of like, around, it's in my genes for sure. My father's also really into folk. He's really into like John Prine and acoustic stuff. So like my mom's side of the family was a lot of soul music, a lot of R&B. My grandmother grew up in Richmond, California. It was like Black music, Black culture. Like that's the music. I thought everybody sounded like Ray Charles and Aretha Franklin. Like I just thought that was like, and then when I'd spend time with my dad would be playing, like John Prine or some really great acoustic, songwriters and stuff. So I got this, I feel like I got this great mix of all that, Joni Mitchell and Stevie Wonder and all this great stuff. And I just was drawn to the stage. You know how, I don't know if you guys have any little kids in your families or any children around you, but you can always tell when there's a kid in the family that is going to be a musician, because the kid is like super drawn to the instrument, right? Like they're like, you go out to eat somewhere, there's music happening, and that one kid is the one that like comes closer and closer to the stage, like they're just like, it's like a tractor beam, they're pulled in.
Yeah.
So anytime there was live music, I was like, it was a tractor beam, and somehow I'd end up on the stage. Like I remember my grandparents in Iowa taking me to some kind of like a dinner show, like a showboat, like a parked showboat. And there was like a dinner show. And I was always like, on the stage somehow. I always got to the front of the stage, and I sang in choirs. We grew up, we didn't have a lot of resources, and it was hard to participate in, to always have piano lessons or singing lessons and stuff like that. Because my mother's health wasn't that great. So I actually didn't really participate in any kind of music enrichment or lessons for a long time, from the time I was like 12 till I was about 21. And at 20, so I took a big, huge break from participating in music. And then at 21, I had found Jill Scott and Erica Badu, who are some really wonderful lyricists and singers and musicians. And I have a lower voice. And I heard Jill Scott sing, and I was like, wow. I was like, the first time I heard a woman singing on the radio, or she's not totally mainstream, but like pretty mainstream, like a radio song that had a low tone voice. And I could sing along to it, and I loved it. Really resonated with me. And I had a roommate who told me she was sick of me singing around the house because I'd sing a bunch of Jill Scott songs and Erykah Badu songs all the time. I would just be like, she finally was like, can you just like go, like, go answer an ad or call some, because I didn't know what to do. So I actually reached out to a woman. I was about 21 years old. I found an ad in the Reader, and I called this lady. Her name's Shyla Nibby. We're still friends. And she was offering a free kind of complimentary 30-minute voice lesson. And so I went and I sang a song for her, and she was so supportive and just asked me at that lesson. She said, I have one question for you. Why aren't you singing professionally right now? And it was the first time a professional had really given me that kind of confidence and believed in me. And so then I started to work on vocals with her and just started to gig. And then I started to do open mics, and it all kind of happened. My dad jokes, he says that it was like I just decided one day I was going to write songs and like play guitar and just go do it. But so I think I always wanted to do it, but you have to feel some confidence in yourself to do it. You have to be willing to suck, to fail, to put yourself out there. And so I just did that over and over and over again. And then I got gigs and I recorded albums, and the whole thing just kind of kept growing.
Man, that's a beautiful story. That really is. That the seed was there, obviously. Just as you said, needed to be nurtured a little bit by somebody who you saw as a professional. And so true when a professional sort of says to you, who at that point maybe wasn't thinking, I'm a professional, you're a professional. And that's the little push over the edge you needed, yeah?
Yeah, we need those. I mean, you need to. Teachers and adults or people in a position of information or power have so much influence on a student and on a child. And I actually had coaches or voice teachers in my earlier life that kind of critiqued my voice, because I always had this big, deep, I could project my voice at like 11. I could really push my voice out, and I loved to sing. So I wasn't a favorite in a choir setting, because I was like popping out, like trying to make it like the Steph show. But instead of just recognizing that I was trying to make it the Steph show at 11, what was said to me then made me feel internally that I wasn't a good singer and that I shouldn't sing. So that shut me down for over about 10 years. And then finally, when I got a guitar though, and I found my dad's old acoustic guitar in the garage. And somebody showed me like a kind of bossa jazz little progression at a music store. And I was like, that's what I want to learn how to play. Like, I want to learn how to play that, like the D minor 9 flat, whatever, I want that chord. And I remember I went home, I was about 21, 22. I'd been doing some voice lessons. I had been singing with other people, and I went home and I practiced this chord progression. It was like 3 chords, and I practiced singing over it. And 8 hours went by. It was like nighttime when like I looked up and I was like, holy cow, it's like 2 a.m. And I had completely lost myself in it. So that's also when I knew that like writing and combining rhythm, strumming, percussive stuff, and singing and lyrics, and finding the right lyrics. Like the cool thing about writing songs, I think, for me, is that I'm looking for like this phrase that really explains how I'm feeling, and maybe maybe I'm jabbing something, or maybe I'm just like really kind of sharing something vulnerable, or it's funny, or it's whatever, but it expresses with all those things in place. Does it make you want to sing it? Is it groovy? Does it gel with the chord? All those things are really fun. I'm happy. I'm happy. That's the good part about the quarantine, I have to say, is that I finally have time to sit at home with a guitar, and I've been like writing music again. So it's been great.
Nice. Yeah.
Fantastic. We have kind of discussed those silver linings, and there certainly are those, and you found a great one. Gosh, so many things there. You were talking about mentors and teachers and choir conductors, and you're so right, Steph. And teachers and mentors out there listening, please take heart. Your words carry so much weight, and if you say something sort of in a negative way, that can really derail somebody, right?
For sure. Yeah. I'm sure we're going to talk about a little bit about Voices of Our City Choir, but being in a role where I'm coaching people or producing people or help, it's a struggle sometimes because I am so aware. I'm like hyper aware that everything I'm saying could either hinder or encourage. So it is really important to be sensitive as sensitive as you can be.
Yeah,
Absolutely true.
You'll never know. You never know what's gonna stick and how it's gonna stick. So yeah, that's a wonderful approach to what you're doing there. Because as a parent too, it's like, okay, we have to choose your words so carefully to make sure that you're pointing in the right direction. That's
right.
Such a key phrase that you just said there. Yeah.
Totally.
So true. So, I don't think we really touched on what your first instrument was. It almost sounds like then voice. Would you say voice was your first instrument?
Yeah, actually, I tried to play a lot of different instruments. I tried to play piano, drums, guitar, even when I was younger, saxophone, tenor sax, and I was a horrible student. I didn't really have like the you have to have like a consistent kind of home base kind of thing. And we moved around a lot. I went to a lot of different schools, and our home life kind of changed a lot. So I loved music, but I didn't have the discipline then or the support maybe to someone who was like, hey, sit down and practice this. Like I was like, no, I don't want to. So, the first instrument was piano, but singing in choirs was like a natural. Yeah. I actually sang with the San Diego Children's Choir. And we just recently partnered. We still partner with them, actually. Ruthie Milgard, who is their music director, their choir director of the kids. She works with the Voices of Our City Choir, and she assists me and helps the choir. But I had the most amazing experience singing with all those kids, and we would do all these concerts, and that was, yeah. You're like a drama kid or a music kid when like you find your people, like you go to like the rehearsal and you're like, oh yeah, you're like 9 and you're like, yes, this is where I want to be.
That's that hour of school that makes the whole day worth it, right?
Yes.
It's fantastic. So, and we are going to get to Voices of the City Choir, but I kind of want to work up to it.
Sure.
You're obviously known as a jazz guitarist, I would say. Was that where you started on guitar? Did you start in the rock world? What was your journey there?
I kind of started with jazzy voicings and not really knowing how they all went together, but had an ear and could kind of put them together with my ear, what I heard. And I went through, I had different groups, different musicians I played with. And I used to play with the group of musicians that were, you mentioned Jesse Charno, Seth Blumberg, Leo Dombecki. It was, and Kevin Cooper was a group of these musicians who backed Ike Turner the last 10 years of his life, 8-10 years. But Ravi Shankar was also living in Encinitas at the time. And they also had a lot of influence and hung a lot with Ravi G and would go to India and study music there. So they were like, I used to work at a bank and I had a full-time bank job, and the market crashed, right? The market fell apart, we're kind of experiencing a similar thing right now. But I saw it as an open window. And I thought, if the world's coming to an end, I'm leaving my desk and I'm going to go and play music and do that for a living. And they were that was the band that I played with at the time. So I moved in Encinitas. I did as many gigs as I could, but I kind of played more R&B, soul, funk kind of stuff. But I was never the lone harmonic instrument. I relied on, Leo or Seth or something. I relied on the keys and the guitar. And then I got a nice nod from the San Diego Music Awards for an album I released. They called it a best jazz album, which it really wasn't like a jazz album, but that's the reward they gave me. And so my good friend Claudia Russell, who works for Jazz 88, she said, you got to get Steph at they used to do that really fun festival, the jazz, the Ocean Beach, the Jazz 88 Ocean Beach Festival. It was just epic. It was so great. So they got me a little spot. I performed by the beach, and Rob Thorson was in the audience, and he was walking to another stage. And so Rob, who I knew, he didn't know who I was. So he was hearing me for the first time. And he says that at that moment when he saw me and he met me or heard me, that he had this like musical kind of aha moment, like where his influence and my style and influence could intersect and it could be cool. It was like a thought he had in the audience, and then that was it. And then he walked into the green room, right? So I met him in the green room. The joke is we met by the bowl of Doritos and we became friends. And then like a couple, like maybe like a week and a half or 2 weeks later, he came over to my house and we jammed together. And my band was in India. I don't think they were around at the time. So I had written all these new songs, and I had never thought that I could, play with an upright bass player like Rob. I love jazz, but I didn't have like, that wasn't the repertoire that I was playing at the time, but I really loved it. And I had just done a gig with Peter Sprigg, who's like amazing, right? We love Peter. So that gave me like a little taste of that music, and I really wanted to learn that music. So Rob came over and we started jamming. And then I played like a new song that I had just written, and we played it together. And it was the same thing, like how you get lost in something, like when something's really there's synergy. So like an hour or so went by and we finished the whole song. And I remember he pulled his bass back. He was like, whoa, like something had just happened. And I love the way, I love the upright bass. I love the way he plays. He's so solid. He's so like in the pocket Rob, it feels so good. So the joke is that I fired myself from my old band and I moved into my friend's garage so I could like have low overhead, because Peter Sprigg told me a story that he lived in a garage to learn guitar. Like he practiced under this blanket and there was a light bulb, and that was his life. I loved that story. So I moved into my friend's garage so I could have low overhead. I lived in this little box of a room, and I completely shifted from the R&B soul funk gigs I had, the touring I had, the albums, and I just went to becoming a musician who could really support myself and back myself while I sang, and also learning about, comping and soloing and trading and all the kind of jazz, conversation language. Now, to say I'm a jazz guitarist, like I have pretty much pressed pause on my getting time to play guitar because of the direction my life went. But I do play jazz, and the album I just released and the music that we're playing tomorrow is all it's all a jazz album. And so, but yeah, I love that I can still pick up my guitar and I can still get lost in it. And there's so much to learn.
That's a lifetime statement right there. There's so much to learn. There's always a new chord voice and you stumble upon and go, what's that? And that's another 2-3 weeks worth of study right there.
Right.
I think that's such a wonderful story that you basically took that leap of faith and said, I'm going all in. Here we go. Not a lot of people have that courage. I didn't know that was the thing, but that definitely was the thing for me. I mean, there's different times in my life where I just saw the thing I wanted or felt the thing I wanted and just made the shift. And I didn't question myself too much. My mom might call and be like, are you going to go get your bank job back? Like, I'm worried about you. Like, you don't have any money. And I was like, yeah, I can't go back to the bank job. I got to do this thing. And so when I lived in the garage and was, putting together like a, jazz, like a repertoire, a book of music, and learning how to be like the guitarist because we formed a trio. It was Rob Thorson, Fernando Gomez, and myself on guitar. And I mean, that was like a really scary, crazy time to all of a sudden be, playing all these different rhythms and hearing all the space. There's so much space. And then where do you lay down your chord? Like, where do you put down the music so that you keep the groove moving where you want it to go, and you're singing in between it. So my brain had to, my ears and brain had to open up like a lot in that period. And yeah. It's a completely different approach than, say, being in a five-piece rock band where guitar is one of two or three chordal instruments, right?
Right. Or, like for this record that I just did, I got to just go in the studio and just sing, which was really fun. And I joked that I was like Frank Sinatra, like one butt cheek on a stool, like with like a whiskey in the, like I'm in my sound booth and I'm like, hey guys, hey, I'm like chilling. It's a completely different experience to just go in and sing with masterful musicians, that are like just incredible. That's so fun for a singer. That's really so fun. So I'm glad I did all that hard work, right? Because I still write. I'll still play my guitar when we come in tomorrow night, and I'll play on a couple songs. But I like that I can also put it down and I can just sing and enjoy the music in that realm also.
Yeah, it's sort of double duty when you're playing and singing. You have two different trains of thought going
Bill,
on the
it
whole time.
certainly is. It certainly is.
So it sounds like, Steph, when you did this most recent album, it was like the old school way where everybody's in the studio at the same time
Mhm.
recording together, yeah?
Yeah, we went up to the studio up in LA. Tally Sherwood has this Tritone studio. It's a really great studio. And we all, Richard Sellers, who plays drums, Richard Sellers, Rob, and myself, we went up to LA and we met up with Josh Nelson, who's an incredible pianist, composer, arranger. His one of his big credits lately or recently was the late Natalie Cole. He played with the late Natalie Cole, and but he has like I think a deal in Japan. He travels all over. He's incredible. And Anthony Wilson, the guitarist, that he also has a project, a really hip project called the Discovery Project that he does with Anthony Wilson, the guitarist who also has a bunch of credits like Diana Krall. And I didn't know that he had gotten the Thelonious Monk competition early in his career too, but he's such a wicked musician. And then this trumpet player, Chris Lawrence, who also played flugelhorn. Okay, so Rob and I went up to LA. We went to a show and we watched the Discovery Project. It's all this music arranged, composed by Josh Nelson, and they play all this old school footage from LA, like from the kind of like historic footage that's like public domain. And there's a guy that trips it out and mixes it with colored lights, and it's going all across the back of the stage, and they're playing this incredible music. It was a high music moment for us. We had such a good time at the concert, and we were talking about going in the studio. And I had already asked Josh if he would participate. When he said yes, then I went after his guitar player and the trumpet player to ask if they would come and join, and they said yes. And so the session was 2 days. Those musicians, they play. They would have the song finished in like 2 takes, like 2 or 3 take, you know what I mean? Like that kind of magic. And it was cool for me too, because I had been really sick actually. I don't know if you guys know that, or maybe BJ, you saw some of that stuff, but I had like bronchitis and pneumonia. I was on and off bed rest for like 6 months.
Yeah.
So we had kept postponing the session. And then we kept the session. It was in October. We go up to LA, and I walked in the studio and I felt really defeated because I knew that I was still sick and that I was not going to be able to really perform. And I was missing this moment to really record with them. And Josh was so cool. He was like, don't worry. He's like, we'll get the tracks and you can go back and re-record all your vocals, and his support and the way he is in the studio, the way Anthony was, the way the whole thing went down was so supportive that I had this really free time singing. Like I felt really relaxed, and I ended up keeping all of the vocals. Like there's only one song that I had to redo because I didn't really know it at the time. So I redid that in San Diego with our engineer, Chris Hobson. But I couldn't believe like they get the song in 2 or 3 takes, and I was like throwing a vocal out in 2 or 3 takes. So the project marks this like growth, the maturity of me as an artist. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to hear it, but it's like some friends and fans and people who've bought my albums before, they're like, you sound different. This feels different. So jazz music is so classic. And those old songs, are so meaningful. I think you really have to have lived some life to give those lyrics life. And I feel like at almost 40, I'll be 40 in a couple months, I've really lived some life now, and I really can put that into the music. And so it was it was an incredible session. Incredible.
Man, I wish I could have been a fly on the wall to witness this. So, you were obviously interpreting songs, some songs that you had written, or were these all songs that had been written before?
They were all standards. They're all jazz tunes. One Joni Mitchell song, my favorite, "A Case of You," which is really lovely. And we did songs because before the pandemic, I had a steady downtown San Diego at the Westgate Hotel. I played at the Westgate every Saturday night. And in that intimate environment where, people come in and get their like scotch on the rocks and the big comfy chairs and, excellent, customer service, a waiter comes around, and takes care of you. This little audience, a regular audience came to see me every Saturday. And in that space, I really got into doing these songs. And so Rob actually really was like, I really feel like we need to record this album. We need to record some of this music because there was a vibe happening at the Westgate. The Westgate's a small spot. It's an acoustic piano, Rob on upright bass, myself on guitar, or just singing. And it was totally a dream come true. I mean, I feel like, you have to kiss. My friend Anthony Smith says you got to kiss a lot of frogs to get to the good gig, to get to the, the great band, So I had to kiss a lot of frogs to get to that sweet gig, and we had the most amazing time exploring classic music,
Yeah, those gigs are, like you say, a lot of frog kissing because in a situation like that, you are creating music amongst the two or three of you there, rather than, well, now we have to play this song for that person, this for that, a totally different scene than, say, a casual, where you're just under the gun for 4 hours. Less about making music and satisfying.
Yeah, no, it's a dream come true to. I mean, we have, as musicians, you take gigs and you work, of course, but then if I feel really lucky that I'm now at a point in my career where I just do the gigs that I want to do, and I get to sing the songs I want to sing, and I get to engage with the audience the way I want. I can tell stories, I can laugh, we can have, I can be myself. It took a while for me to feel comfortable being myself, and now to find the right body of music, and it's a good time. I'm really happy.
It's just this great journey, and I'm, as BJ said earlier, excited to see where it goes from here. So let's cycle back, if we could, for a second to your songwriting. One of our volunteers, who's with us pretty much every time we do Mom at Home, bless his heart, Joe Rogers, asks the question, Steph. He asks, when writing lyrics, does it come out as poetry or everyday language?
It mostly comes out as poetry. I try not to. If it comes out as like a sentence, then I let it come out as a sentence. But I try not to make it in any kind of like that kind of a format. I'm working on a book right now with a friend of mine, and writing is a whole other. That's a whole other thing. You have a lot more space, but you can be really creative with the words you use in a song. So I think I do it more like poetry. The thing I was writing today was a little more poetry really wise. Yeah.
Okay. And I guess I'll follow that up with a question. Does it, how am I trying to phrase this? Do you sometimes hear a melody first and then lyrics sort of fall into place, or do you generally write lyrics first and then create the melody?
Okay, I'm going to demonstrate. I have my guitar. Can I demonstrate? Is it too soon to demonstrate something?
No, never too soon.
All right. Okay.
Never too soon for guitar and vocal.
Okay, cool. Let me just make sure I'm tuned. It's kind of a warm in here. So I had I don't know what came first. I love this. So this chord. So I knew in my head that I wanted to go to like this G major after that. So I'm doing this big kind of suspended whatever this. And I wrote lyrics to fit into this melody, right? So thank you, my friend, for holding me, for shining light on me through prayer. Oh, for giving me air to breathe. So it was like it led me in, and I had an idea of what was on my mind. What was on my mind was that this woman I'd never met, this really nice lady that follows me on Instagram, told me that she and a group of, might make me cry, but she and a group of people were praying for me. It does make me cry. She said, you know, there's so many people that like love you and care about you that you don't even know that want the best for you. And so I was like, what could I say to her except like a song, you know? Thank you, my friend, for holding me, and because she said we were holding you in prayer, and it just made me feel so moved. So that was I think the melody I came up with first, and then I found that little voice saying, but yeah, it's an ear thing. I'm just kind of following like the feeling, like where I want to twist and churn, and how you want to go, where you want to go next, and it's kind of unfolding together.
So poetry, and yet it is sort of conversational in that way, because conversations have a tendency to do just that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here, and then you follow the path of the dialogue. And your story about the woman telling you that they were holding you in prayer, I mean, that speaks directly to how you have touched them, and obviously countless numbers of people with music, and just proof positive again that it works.
Music saved my life. I'm sure it's played a positive. Obviously, this is what we do. Music as this connector, you know, a healer, you know, a space to remember good times or to express yourself. There's we're really lucky. I mean, there's not a lot of jobs where you get to go express yourself. That's my job, you know. It's like I get to express myself, and yeah, it doesn't feel like a job. It feels like a real blessing.
It truly is, because you know that you're giving and you're receiving. It's this beautiful two-way street.
Yeah.
And you reminded me of some of the tour groups actually that we have come through the museum. As you know, we book tours all the way from preschool through seniors. And some of the groups we get are dementia and Alzheimer's sufferers. And when they're in the museum, if a song comes on that was a big part of their life, they spark. They come back to life, right? There's a wonderful documentary called Alive Inside. Are you familiar with it?
I am, yeah. Yeah, no, it's I don't want to jump the gun again and talk about the choir, but in my work with the choir, I see it just constantly. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful.
And you're not jumping the gun at all, actually. I was just getting ready to drive the bus down that road. So, advocacy work obviously became a big part of your life, of who you are, giving back. So I'd love to have you talk to us about Voices of Our City Choir, and then any other advocacy work that you're doing, Steph.
Yeah, well, the choir, you know, I didn't realize it until I started working on this book. I'm working on a book about my life and about the choir, and my friend Ron Donahoe, who's helping me write it, he made he identified that I actually kind of was homeless as a kid. I never felt like I was homeless, but I didn't have a regular home. You know, I moved around a lot. It was a split family. It's just a lot of change. So maybe that's why I identify with and connect with people that I meet on the street. But so we're in 2020. So around 2015, 2014, I had started to do outreach with different groups, and I love people. People's my thing. I love people, and I love hanging and getting to know people and making them feel good. You know, I think I listen really. I'm a good listener, and we're just all equal. So I see myself together with people, and so I found out that I didn't need any other organization to do the kind of work I wanted to do. You know, I didn't have to be connected to something that was preaching or pushing an agenda or anything. I just wanted to get to know my unsheltered neighbors and let them know that that I saw them and that they were worthy of. And I feel terrible that people live unsheltered and experience homelessness, and it's all exposed, and their whole life is just out in the open, and they're criminalized for it. And the experience of being in that shape, or in that, in that kind of abject poverty, you really can't get out of the situation unless you have an advocate. So in 2016, I noticed that there were like thousands more people living on the street. It really exploded in downtown San Diego. I live near downtown San Diego. And I started to go to lectures. I went to city council meetings. I met this really great advocate, activist, Jeannie Crescenzo. And she was explaining the truth about it. People think that people move to San Diego to become homeless. That's not true. It's like over 80% of the people that you see living on the street became homeless here. So there's all these other things that play into that, and things that are happening. But I just felt really compelled to get involved, because I knew that the city was just, at the time, the way they were handling it was just kind of giving people tickets, arresting them, they'd be released, and the cycle would continue. And it was just like not getting any better. So while I was doing outreach and meeting people, I met a gentleman on like J Street downtown, in the heart of the homelessness crisis. This is like it's called the Low Bottoms, kind of near kind of Father Joe's and that kind of area of downtown. And this guy invited me to sit in his tent, and we started rapping about life and what was going on. And I naively, I had all this, let's revolt, like let's march. I wanted to get people like activated, and I was there to, help with whatever, food, blankets, but like, what do you want to do? And this guy that I met, he just kind of smiled at me and kind of swatted me, kind of like, yeah, he's like, it doesn't matter what we say, because we don't have a voice. It doesn't matter what we do. We don't matter. And the same day I met a woman who found out I was a musician, because that's how I bond with people, right? People, you go up to somebody, it's like, hey, how you doing? What's up? They're like, well, who are you? Like, who are you with? And I'm like, I'm not with anybody. My name's Steph. I play music. And then when I said that I played music, then the people I met would go, I do too. I play harmonica. I play guitar. I write songs. I'm working on a book. So we totally bonded as creatives. So that, like, the same day I met this woman who she said, Google my name. She goes, look me up. I sing in a choir in Chicago. And I looked her up, and there was this huge choir that's been around for like maybe 25, 30 years now, that's based in Chicago for people that are unsheltered. So I saw that, and I was like, wow, that is super cool. What a concept, And then like on the same day I met this Pastor Chris Nafis. It was these events that happened very quickly, right? And I remember meeting him. I was like, where I was standing, the temperature, the day, the grass I was standing on. And Pastor Chris said, hey, I like you and your friends and all the outreach you're doing. If you want to use my church for anything, you can come and use it. It's right on the corner. And like a voice coming from the heavens or some other place, it came through me right away. I said, great, because I want to start a choir. And the guy was like, Chris was like, okay. And I was like, I was like, said it. And I was like, I do. Like, it was kind of like one of those things, And so I had just met this really, really talented woman in San Diego, like 2 months before this, Nina Deering. And Nina Deering is a multi-instrumentalist, an incredible vocalist, and a choir director. And so I said, hey, and she had started to join me in the outreach. She was super moved by what was going on. And I called her up right after I talked to Chris, and I said, do you want to start a choir with me for people experiencing homelessness? And she said, yes. And so she came over to my house. She brought 3 charts. We talked about it. And then she started to join me like all the time on all the outreach that we went out and did. And we go meet people, and we started inviting them to this weekly choir practice. So it started with like 1, 2, 3 people. And then kind of word got out. My friends in the press wrote stories. More people were coming. And before I knew it, by the end of 2016, there were like, I don't know, maybe we did a concert, and there was maybe like 16 people in the choir at that time. But someone ran a front page story. What is her name? She's amazing. Anyways, she ran this Anyway, she ran this front page story on the Union Tribune, and like 350 people came to our first concert. And let me just tell you, I never expected the choir to be a choir that performed or went out and did that. It was really about like hanging, having a safe space to make music, and get to know each other. And I had just finished my album with Kamau Kenyatta, and I was getting kind of set up to do some touring in Europe. And right as that was happening, this choir was getting this national attention on PBS NewsHour, and all of these people were calling. And so we had this epic concert. The choir sang one song, and the whole audience stood up and received them, responded joyously, cried. The choir members kind of were shocked by the response at first, and then they realized they were clapping for them, and they stood taller in the moment. They received this appreciation, and it was this moment, this special electric moment where I literally saw people feel better, like the audience. Because I think that people, when it comes to homelessness, people want to help, but they don't know what to do. They don't know how to get involved. And the choir, what it's grown into now, I mean, I can get into that, but in that moment, all those people that came, 350 people came because they wanted to pay their respects. They wanted to honor those people. They wanted to support them and be a part of encouragement that could lead to something positive. And so that's what happened for the group. And then it just kept growing and growing and growing. And so now we have before the pandemic, we had like 250 choir members.
That's amazing, Steph. And you just said a moment ago, people want to help, but they just don't know what to do. You've directly given people a means to help by being in attendance at those concerts.
For sure. And then, we became a nonprofit, so we've expanded. We have programs because the arts is super important for the art's sake, but the arts actually is super powerful in a person feeling like a human being, expressing themselves and getting that bubble of confidence again, so that they go to, housing, that they go to a doctor's appointment, that they feel supported by the community and loved, and they feel that self-love again, that they can go towards those resources. Because every year, millions more dollars goes out to homelessness, goes out to try to help and solve the problem. And I really feel like we found a solution, because, it's an individual that's experiencing the crisis. You have to see the individual and provide a connection. There has to be something that person can participate in that's them, And so that's what's so cool. The choir, the organization, the programs, even the staff, half of the staff are people that are currently homeless or were homeless when we met. So it's like we built the whole thing with people living on the street. It's not me telling or directing. It's us working on a solution together. It's peer advocates leading other people. It's people with lived experience going, hey, I get it. I totally get what's going on right now. And we have so much, because of the music and because of the positive vibe from the music and all the concerts, now we sit on the board with the mayor and the city and the county. I mean, we advocate. Our advocacy has reached a level where we can call our elected officials and say, do you know what's happening on this corner? Or do you know what's happening at this shelter? Or how can we help support, this movement? Like when the pandemic hit, my advocacy director, John Brady, wrote a letter that was signed on by our other advocates, Think Dignity and all these other groups, to get the city to open up the convention center to be an emergency shelter. So, there's a lot of advocates, there's a lot of people donating and getting involved and trying to help, like from, the Lucky Duck Foundation, which is like, the Padres, the owner of the Padres, to all these different charities and organizations. But people have to look at homelessness different if it's going to change. And that's what the music does. The music makes, it makes like people feel, they see themselves in the choir, because homelessness could happen to anybody. It could happen to any of us.
And you've given the homeless back their sense of humanity, I would say.
Yeah, and we try. we try to, I understand when we say homeless and when people say the homeless, that they mean it just as a way to refer to the group of people experiencing homelessness. But we try to even change the language, because the language is really important, to say, I really like unsheltered neighbors, because they're our neighbors, but they're unsheltered, right? So we are serving our unsheltered community, people experiencing homelessness. So, but yeah, they're no one expects the choir to be brilliant. That's the best part. Like, I get to sit back and watch like a choir member come out and kill it. like slay. And the audience is like, what? Like, when we did our America's Got Talent thing, and Patricia, who's in the choir, who wrote the spoken word, and she delivers her spoken word. That was like we did that taping in front of America's Got Talent, and there was like maybe 2,500 people in the audience. They were already like loving the band. I mean, like loving the whole music and everything. But when she started and she had her feature, I could hear these like these yelps from like the audience. Like, they just can't handle, this person is so good and they're so brilliant, and they have so much to say. So it's the mission is to, change the experience of homelessness, like to help our homeless brothers and sisters, right? But it's also to change the perception of homelessness, and that's what's happening through the art, through our music.
And I'd say very well. And I understand the choir received the Golden Buzzer on the show, which is quite an honor, yes?
Now, we did. Yeah, that was an incredible experience. I don't know how long this interview is going to be, but that was an insane experience.
We're coming up on the hour, but please share that with us if you'd like.
Really? Am I talking too much? Is this too much? Who's going to watch? Is this too long?
Go for it. I am inspired. You are a conduit. You are a conduit of inspiration. So,
well, so America's Got Talent had seen a clip of us on YouTube, and they reached out to us and said, "Hey, we'd like you to come and audition." Like, they said, "We really think that you come out and we want you to come audition." And I actually, because I was so sick at the time, I had turned it down, because I was like, I can't even fathom how we can move this group. And at the same time, you got to remember, we're a grassroots organization. We're building infrastructure as we go. We're handling crisis situations. We're building concerts with people in crisis. So, and I'm only one person. So I'm the executive director, the music director, the choir director, the van driver. Like, Rob's doing this, doing that. There's staff, but it was really struggle. So they promised, they said, "Listen, we really, really want you guys to be a part of this and to come audition. So we're going to make it super easy. We're going to come to San Diego. We're going to have a private audition. We'll set it up. You guys come." And I was like, okay, that sounds really cool. And the whole process with AGT has been, we wouldn't have been able to have done it, because we're really helping people in crisis, like real time. So to do a reality TV show, it has to make, it can't impact us in a way, right? Like, we're not like a normal performance group. So they've just been super supportive. They sent on a bus. So we made it through the first round, and then they called and said, "Okay, you're going to come and do this audition for the celebrity judges and the audience." And so they sent a super nice bus, and they got us hotel rooms. And imagine like 50 choir members, getting on the bus to go to LA to go like go rock the Pasadena Theater. And we check into the hotel, and all day we're doing, oh, look, there's Rob. Hey, Rob.
Hi.
Hi, Rob.
So they're taping for a show. They're getting like footage. So they have, a story producer. They have like the people interviewing us. They have all these different things they're capturing. And the choir is like totally game. I mean, that's when I knew, like in October when we did the first, or maybe it was November when we did the first audition, they were poised. They were like ready. They wanted to do it, So again, this is like, what do they want to do? If they didn't want to do it, then we wouldn't have done it, but they wanted to do it. And we decided to do an original song, because we have a songwriting workshop and we write music too. So we sang the song Sounds of the Sidewalk. We had discussed maybe doing something else, but the choir was like, "We really got to do our anthem." So I was like, okay, we're going to do our anthem. So we roll into the Pasadena Theater. We're doing all these little like backstage filming things and stuff. Plus there's like people rolling around like on roller skates and people like in fuzzy outfits. Like there's like the whole show vibe happening. And the choir, they selected like 6 of the choir members to interview. And I sat in the back, watching with, the film guys, and I'm just bawling because I've never heard these kinds of stories on a reality TV show like on NBC. These are people that have been like arrested and discriminated against and held down and oppressed. And they're just like sharing so heartfelt what their story is and what the choir means to them. So I tell you that just to say that it was like we got to be really authentic and ourselves in this LA reality TV experience. And they were really great. The crew is like amazing. They're really nice and all genuine. So then the next day, so we go to bed, and the next day we wake up, and that's going to be our audition day. And so we go in to do our audition, and we have like a holding room where we're hanging out, and we're going to go do a sound check. Before we go do the sound check, the choir's super like excited, it's another thing to be like watching that show. I was born in 1980. I've been seeing Simon Cowell for 20 years, like on TV. Right. So to be in that experience, you're like walking out on the stage and you're seeing the X's and the whole thing. You're like, okay, all right, I'm in this show right now. And we ran through the song, and some of the crew was crying. They were like, when they found out who we were and they heard it and they heard the music, and this one kind of head crew guy was like, oh my God. So I was just feeling this kind of, you don't know when you go somewhere like how it's going to be, and you hope that people treat you well and treat the choir well, because that's super important. And it was everything and then some. And so we go back to the holding room where the people are on the roller skates and the fuzzy outfits, and we're like waiting to go out and open the show. And Terry Crews, who's the host, came back and talked to us, and he sat with me in the choir and was asking us questions. And, we've, since the beginning, now we've helped like over 60 people move off the street and get into housing or safe shelter. So he's hearing about all that. He's like making all this deep eye contact with me. He's like, wow, this is amazing. And I was like, right, it's amazing. We're having the best time. The whole choir's around. And then, okay, so then he leaves the room, and then the producers come over and they go, okay, you're going to go do your audition. So we walk out to the stage. The audience is insanely pumped. I've never heard an audience like this in my life. They're like on a roller coaster. They're like, yeah, they're just like freaking out. And they told us that too, but I didn't believe it. Like, this is really something. So we walk out on the stage. Terry Crews just pumped up the audience. So the choir, they do 2 tapings a day. And so we were the first taping of that Sunday. So we walk out, and the audience is already like clapping. And I was like, that's cool. Like, I thought maybe they saw something about us, but they didn't. It was just they were just ready. It was like a supportive, crazy, great audience. And so Simon Cowell says to me, I walk out after the choir, and Simon says, okay, obviously you're a choir. What's special about your choir? And I said, well, we started this choir 4 years ago for people experiencing homelessness. And what they don't show you on the news, on the clip of the show, is that the whole place stood up and gave us a standing ovation for like over a minute. They were just like, it was so overwhelming, you guys, like how it always makes me cry.
Making me cry too. Steph.
Yeah, just just how much they got it and they loved it, and I'm like looking at my husband, I'm looking at Rob on the bass, and we're both like laughing and choking on tears, like that combo emotional release where you're like, like, so like we don't, and the choir's jumping up and down, they're super happy. And so Simon Cowell asked me like a bunch of different questions, and like we talked for like maybe 8 minutes before we even sang. And then he's like, okay, now go sing. And I said, okay. So I walk over to where my guitar is. I hand my handheld mic over, and I strum the guitar. And Nina Deering used to always say this. This will make me cry. She used to always say, welcome to choir. And it was like this, like open invitation to us and to be a part of it. And my manager, John, he said, when you said that, like, welcome to choir, the whole place was like, okay, like something's like they were in it. We start playing and we're jamming, and the audience is super into it. Like they don't really show how the full on audience response, but they're super feeling it. And then it gets to Patricia's spoken word, and it's just like pushes it over the top. Like the judges and stuff, I can see their faces. They're like, just like, what is happening? And then we finish big, because this is also connected to Sony and stuff. So we were working with like Sony music producers, like all this other stuff backstage. I didn't tell you everything, but there's all these people that were kind of, coaching us and pushing us to really push the end. So we're rocking the end, and we finished the song. And I mean, the audience gave us like 4 standing ovations and like through the whole thing. It was, and Simon Cowell stands up first, and he's just like, he just said, they said a bunch of positive stuff, but he goes, well, tell me about this song. Like, where's the song from? And I said, this song is written by the choir. They wrote the song. And he said, what? And he like drops his face and is like, what? So then all the judges say their thing. And I'm kind of like, okay, I'm like, is this it? Are we done? Like, it just felt a little like not anticlimactic, but I was like, okay. And then all of a sudden Terry Crews comes off the stage. And so the thing about the golden buzzer is that the thing about the show, 50,000 people auditioned, and only 225 make it to this round, and only 5 acts get a golden buzzer. Okay, so it's very coveted. It pushes you all the way to the live round. And Terry Crews comes off the stage, and he's just beautiful, like the most beautiful Black man ever. He's got like this beautiful suit on, and he's so like, the audience is losing their mind, screaming bloody murder because he's in the audience. And this excitement is like building and building. And he's talking about, Simon, it's time that we don't just talk, but we walk the walk. This is what the choir does, and this is what they're about. And we need this. He's saying all this stuff about community and the world and us coming together and helping each other. And so he comes behind the judges. And at this point, it's like pandemonium, like everybody's on a roller coaster screaming bloody murder. I look back at the choir members, they're like, push the buzzer, like they're freaking out, like everybody's like, oh my God. And then he's like, and that's why I'm giving you the golden buzzer. And he slams the buzzer, and the loudest sound goes off on stage, like this big, like long, big sound, and all this gold confetti shoots out from everywhere. It's like just everywhere, like we can't see anything. Everybody is ugly crying, like no one can handle every kind of crying. Patricia was so overwhelmed that she looked down at the end of the stage, and she looked out, and she chucks her walker. She has a walker. She chucks her walker and throws herself down on her knees on the stage and puts her hands up. And like later on, we watched the episode together, and she like kind of giggled about watching herself. And she was like, she goes, I couldn't wait. I couldn't spend one more second not on my knees praising God for the moment.
Wow.
Wow, indeed.
Wow.
So all the judges came up on stage, which they don't normally do. Normally it's just like the one judge that gave you the golden buzzer. All the judges came up. We were out on that stage for like 30 minutes. I mean, like, because we were hugging, there was gold confetti everywhere. We went to the side of the stage. We were like waving at the audience. The audience was like standing up and clapping for us. And it was such you talk about like a journey.
It's a lifetime journey right there.
It's an incredible, something you couldn't plan for, of course. And none of this I could have planned for, but we all, I'm as much voice as is Patricia, as is the other choir members, as is, all of us together. It's like this collective, this family. We feel like a family. And so our family got the golden buzzer, and it was pretty epic. And a gentleman who helped write the song, Stephen Reed, he was actually kind of on his deathbed. He couldn't come with us, and he had been given like a week left to live. And we ended up calling him after we got the golden buzzer. And, he was pretty much on his way out. And the whole choir was around me. I had them put their hands on my back and I made the call and we just said, "Hey, Stephen, we just got the golden buzzer. The song you helped write, it's going to live on. We're going to go on to the live round and your song lives on." And he opens his eyes like he's like, he hears us. But he ended up passing away like that morning. So so much happened behind the stage, on the stage, after, during, like it was so overwhelming, so truly unbelievably overwhelming. And what's happened since, I mean, we've gotten emails from across the world, people who are really moved, people who've donated. They've helped us continue during the pandemic because a big part of our fundraising came from performing live. So we don't have that vehicle anymore. And thank God that we had that moment and we got so many donations and, opportunities and, computers donated to the choir and all sorts of stuff. I don't know what's going on over here. I think my husband's trying to get back in. Hello?
I just wanted to come in.
Come in, Rob.
I forgot my map.
Come on in.
The door won't open.
Push. There you go.
Locked
Hi,
down.
Rob.
Special
Planning
guest.
a bike trip.
Oh, okay.
He's planning a bike trip. We're going to go to Catalina. His birthday's tomorrow.
Oh.
So we're going to play at the museum and then we're going to go to Catalina right after. And then he goes on a bike trip. We like to bicycle. So he's going to bicycle for like a week.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Steph, that's, I would say, one of the most compelling stories we have had on Mom at Home. I'm completely drained right now myself. Thank you for sharing that. And I think one of the most beautiful parts of that story is what you gave Steve in his last hours.
Oh, man. There's there are really no words to it's a lot of gratitude. We feel a lot of gratitude and the amazing like spirit of God, that kind of inspired the collaboration with me and Nina in the beginning, that inspired the outreach and the connection. And, Rob, being my partner, like I became a full-time volunteer. I quit touring. I didn't go to Europe. I totally shelved my album and went from like earning money to, basically working like 14, 15-hour days, like back to back, like sometimes. We started a shelter. We had done all sorts of stuff. So there's all this other stuff behind that for us to have that moment on America's Got Talent, and now to have all these videos and all of this platform, this huge platform to talk about homelessness, to show the world who's experiencing homelessness and to see their, the choir members' brilliance and how special they are is everything. It was like a lightning journey. You know what I mean? Like from the moment it started, it was like one of those things that was like pulling me the whole time. So now we've been pulled to this new plateau and, doing interviews with Patricia for Access Hollywood and like People Magazine and like Terry Crews's, posts and comments about us on social media, and we get to plan our next songs. There's all these opportunities and because of this thing that we did with AGT, we are still an organization. We are still existing during the pandemic, which is so important because, if you don't have, how hard is it right now for us? It's a challenge. So if you are suffering, financial issues and you don't have Wi-Fi, you don't have a device, you're not going to be having the same experience as somebody who can maybe pull their business inside and can just kind of work from home and cope and do whatever they can do. It's much harder. So that community is being impacted in a huge way. So it was really important that we stay connected. So that's why we've moved all of these workshops online. We have 5 workshops now online.
Fantastic. And
Yeah.
what a way to stay connected through your AGT exposure. And again, I'm going to say you have, you're a hero because you have opened so many people's eyes to the fact that these are brothers and sisters just like us. They're not They're not invisibles. They're not unmentionables. They're people just like the rest of us.
Right.
And you've given them hope at the same time. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for letting me tell the long story. It's a long story, but it's a cool story, right? It's a good story.
So cool. So cool. And thank you, BJ. I'm going to let you take us out. But
Thanks,
Steph,
Bill.
thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Wow. Okay. I can't. It's hard to encapsulate. Come back from that, looking out over the edge of everything you've done and just bringing it back to center. I'm gonna make sure my mic's unmuted so I'm not just rambling on without people hearing what I'm saying. Thank you, Steph, for being with us today. We're as a nonprofit, one nonprofit to the other, we've understood how hard that pivot has become, and it's so glad. I mean, there's no doubt that with your talent, with your passion, with your drive, that you would be able to pivot that organization, and having a catalyst like AGT. I mean, that's just an amazing feather in your cap, but not the only feather that you will have. I believe that moving forward. So that's just kudos to you. That's amazing. Tomorrow night, I'm looking forward to having you here at the Museum of Making Music.
I know. I get to do a gig for the first time in forever.
And
so
so
fun.
tickets are still available. And the thing about tickets,
And they're only
is
$10.
only $10.
They're only $10.
And we split that $10 in half. We send, we make sure we take care of our artists here. All artists are taken care of at the Museum of Making Music, and then half of that actually helps support the museum. We have a massive renovation that we're doing here. Everything is changing at the museum. The story is becoming much more clear, the way we're telling our story here at the museum. And we will be opening the museum back up February 2nd, but until then, we're going to continue to do virtual touch points with guests like Steph. We have so much more, some wonderful guests coming up at Mom at Home. If you're inspired today, I hope that you'll return every Friday here at 2 p.m. Next week, we have Ronnie Baker Brooks, a very, very amazing Chicago blues guitarist. His story is epic. He is an epic performer. He's been here at the museum. We have Shauna Tucker later this month. We have
I'm buddies with Shauna.
Do you know Shauna?
Shauna's my bestie.
I saw that online. I'm like, oh my gosh, we have Steph Johnson and Shauna work together. I'm like, it's like full circle. Like all these
Shauna Tucker's the best.
Oh,
She's
and we've
the
had her
best.
here, and I missed her performance here at the Museum of Making Music, which I was so bummed to miss that. But I will be here for the Mom at Home session, as I am most of the time, unless I'm on vacation. But I'll be here for Shauna, and we're looking forward to that. That is in 2 weeks from today, and then at the end of the month, July 31st, we have Allison Brown, very talented banjo player. We've had her here, and then following that, we have Jamie Deering, actually the entire Deering family, talking about Deering banjos. So, but Jamie is she's
they
the
sponsor the choir.
Yep.
They sponsor the choir. They're great. We have like a really cool music family here in San Diego, don't we? From Taylor guitars to Deering banjos to all the musicians and like all of you guys. Like it's cool.
Oh,
we got a cool thing.
It is a thriving community of music and musicians and music makers here in our not just here in San Diego, but I mean the community that we have and we've established wherever we go. The people that we come in contact with have made a huge difference in our lives as an organization, and hopefully in others. So we appreciate everyone today here joining us for the Mom at Home session. We hope, if you don't have your ticket already, to come see Steph tomorrow night here at the museum virtually.
And also, if I can share, you can go and stream my whole album for free on my website, which is at stephjohnsonband.com/shop. But it's right on my website. It's the second tab, like listen to my new album, but you can hit play. I suggest listening with a good pair of headphones. I like my Sony, or my Bose headphones. I really love those. You can check out the music and you can hear what we're going to be playing.
Awesome. So looking forward to that tomorrow night. Other than that, thank you for being here for Mom at Home, everyone. Take care and have a great day.